All right, get this. We're diving into something big today, like really big. We're talking a potential earthquake shaking up the entire global economy.
Yeah, and you know what's at the epicenter of it all?
This article you sent about the BRICS nations and their plan to, get this, launch their own currency. The unit, they're calling it.
The unit. It's a bold move.
Bold! That might be an understatement. This feels way bigger than just a new kind of money.
You're right. It's a total power play. Could reshape, well, everything. Think about it. The global financial landscape as we know it. Gone.
And that's what's got me so riled up. I mean, we talk about geopolitics on this show a lot, but this is it right here. In action. Real world stuff.
It's the BRICS nations. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They've been talking a big game about challenging the West for a while.
Right, right. Back in 2009 they formed, I remember that. But I'll be honest, I thought it was all talk back then. Like, just another one of those international things that doesn't really go anywhere.
And then they created the BRICS Development Bank. Suddenly things got real.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Actions speak louder, right? They're not just talking. So, is this bank actually doing anything?
It's gaining traction. It's looking like a real alternative to the IMF. And you know what that means?
Tell me.
Developing nations, the ones who felt pushed around by the IMF and their lending terms, they're paying attention.
That's huge. So this unit thing, this is them going all in, though.
All in.
This article, though, it connects some wild dots. Sanctions against Russia, China sitting on a mountain of gold. It's a wild ride.
It's all connected. The BRICS nations, they see the world getting shaky about the U.S. dollar being in charge. They're positioning themselves, to be the ones who fix it.
So not just a bigger slice of the pie, a whole new bakery. Where do we even start with this? Okay, so the article throws around this term, the unit, like it's the secret ingredient to a whole new world order. But what exactly is it? It can't just be about swapping out dollars for, units, can it?
You're right to hone in on that. It's far more nuanced than a simple currency swap. Imagine a whole new financial system, one where the U.S. dollar isn't the automatic go-to. That's the ambition fueling the unit.
Okay, that's starting to paint a picture, but I need more details. The article mentions something about blockchain technology being involved.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. Think about the problems BRICS Plus wants to solve. Lack of transparency, the potential for manipulation by powerful nations, and barriers to entry for emerging economies. Blockchain addresses all of these.
So instead of relying on, say, the U.S. Federal Reserve to oversee transactions, we're talking about a decentralized system where everyone has a record of what's going on.
Precisely. Every transaction is recorded on a public ledger, making it incredibly transparent and, theoretically, much harder for any single entity to control or manipulate. It's about leveling the playing field.
That makes sense in theory, but isn't the whole point of a central bank to provide stability? How would a decentralized system like that work on a global scale?
That's where the second key ingredient comes in central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs.
Ah, right. The article mentions those, but I'll admit I'm still a bit fuzzy on how they fit into all of this.
Think of it this way. Each country within BRICS Plus would still have control over its own digital currency. These CBDCs would be their own thing, but they would all operate within this larger blockchain-based system.
So it's like having a common language for international trade, but each country gets to write its own poetry.
A very poetic way to put it, and a pretty accurate analogy. Now, on top of blockchain and CBDCs, there's a third, even more radical element the article highlights: gold.
Okay, this is where my ears really perked up. Tying a global currency to gold feels like a throwback to, a very different era. Didn't we abandon the gold standard back in the 70s?
We did, and that's exactly why BRICS Plus bringing it back into the mix is such a bold move.
The article makes a big deal about China's gold reserves in this context. I'm starting to see how all the pieces fit together.
It's a power move, no doubt. If the unit gains traction, those reserves suddenly give China, and by extension, the entire BRICS Plus bloc, significantly more leverage on the global stage.
It's like they're saying, you want to play in our new system, you'd better have something of value to bring to the table.
Exactly. And that something of value is no longer just tied to the U.S. dollar.
Okay, I'm starting to get why this unit thing has everyone buzzing. But even if it looks good on paper, is it really doable? Can they really pull this off? Challenge the U.S. dollar? I mean, come on.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
The article lays out the motivation behind it, and honestly, it's pretty convincing. You've got all this stuff going on, global tensions rising, the economy feels like a seesaw, and there's this, resentment, I guess you'd call it, toward the U.S. using the dollar like a weapon.
You said it before, that whole exorbitant privilege thing. What does that even mean, and why should I care?
It's an old phrase, actually. French finance minister, way back in the 60s. It means the U.S., they get special perks because everyone uses the dollar, borrow money cheap, their policies ripple out and affect the whole world, that kind of thing.
So they set the rules because everyone else has to play with their ball.
Pretty much. And not everyone likes that. This unit, it's like they're saying, we're writing new rules, fairer rules.
Easier said than done, right?
Right.
This BRICS meeting coming up, the article makes it sound like a big deal. Are we going to see this unit thing unveiled, like some, I don't know, shiny new weapon?
I wouldn't get too excited just yet. This is big stuff, changing how the whole world does business. It's like steering a giant ship. It takes a while to turn. Remember, the article said over 40 countries might join BRICS plus Ellis. That's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
So let's say this unit gains traction. What's it going to take? People tossing out their dollars, buying units? Or is this more about governments and big corporations getting on board?
Probably both. If regular people start using it, that's a huge sign. But it's also the hardest thing to do. Remember that BRICS Pay app?
How could I forget? Felt a little clunky, like they were pushing it. But it did make you think, what if this unit thing actually worked?
Exactly. For people to use a new currency, it's got to be easy, got to be safe, got to be worth it. That app, well, it shows they're at least trying.
So it's not just about governments making deals. It's about convincing, your average Joe on the street that this is a good idea.
100%. But getting those big players on board, the other countries, especially the big economies, that's crucial. If they start using units for trade, shifting their reserves, that's when the power dynamic really starts to change.
This is less like a done deal and more like a high-stakes poker game then. Just starting, but with huge implications.
Now you're getting it. And the article's last question, that's the real kicker. What if the U.S., by trying so hard to stay on top, is actually pushing the world toward this new system? Ironic, right?
That sends chills down my spine. Trying to hold on too tight, you just might make everything fall apart.
And that's what makes this so fascinating. Even if this unit never launches, the fact that we're even talking about it, that tells you everything. The world's changing and how we deal with money. That's going to change too.
It's a good reminder that the future is never set in stone, especially when it comes to money.
And that, my friend, is why we dive deep.